All right, now let's work on the freckles. To do that, I'm going to need to create a texture to add to our brush here in Blender to paint the freckles. Because I don't want to go through and click and paint every single freckle. I want a brush that can put down more than that in one stroke. So what I'd like to do is create a new brush in Krita that we can then bring into Blender and use to paint the freckles. So let's go over to Krita, and I will click on New File. And we've got these texture templates here in Krita, and I like these a lot because you can just very quickly choose a texture of a certain size and start working immediately. And I like this 2048 one. I'm going to choose this one. Now it has a gray background, but I'm just going to hide that because I want it to be see-through. I want to be able to see through the parts that I don't paint. The brush that I like to use for this is this one right here, this kind of round, almost a Q-tip kind of thing brush here. And I will put the color at almost a black, kind of a brown, almost black over here, something like that. And I've got my opacity at 100 and the flow at 100. So if I use the bracket keys, the keys by the P key on the keyboard, to increase and decrease the brush size, I can just click, and the more I click, the darker it gets. And let's just add a few of these around this whole template, around this whole page here. So I'll add those, and then I'm going to reduce the size a bit and do it a little bit more. So we just kind of get a random smattering of little dots here. Things like this, and maybe I'll make it even a little smaller and do some more. This, all around in here. And maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger, maybe make one over here. A couple that aren't quite as dark, something like this. And yeah, I think that's probably pretty good. Maybe I add one right in here. So I'm just trying to get, as I said, a random collection of these things, something like this. But now that we have this done, let's go ahead and export this out. I'm going to go to File and Export. And let's call this Freckles Brush. Here we go. And I'm using a PNG here so that we can see through it, so that we have an alpha channel that's clear on the parts where we didn't paint anything. So I'm going to click Save. There we go. And now let's go back to Blender. And here in Blender, let's bring in that texture for our brush. So over here in this panel, let's once again ensure that we have skin selected in the materials. Come down here to the texture properties, and let's create a new texture for our brush. Let's click New, and we have Type Image. Let's click Open, and let's go into that Textures folder, and here it is, Freckles Brush. Open that, and you can see it there. Now we need to add it to the brush. To do that, let's come up here and move this over, and we want to add it right here under Texture. Let's pull this down right here and click this. Let's give it a new name so we know for sure. We'll call this Freckles Brush again. There we go. And so if we pull this down, you can see that's been loaded here. And while we're here, let's change the mapping from tiled to random. Here we go. And let's ensure that this random check mark is selected. Now let's come over here to the stroke, change it from space to dots. Okay. So we've got the brush all loaded up with our texture. Now we need something to paint on. We need to create a new texture slot here to actually paint on. So let's come over here to our texture slots. Make sure skin is selected, and let's create a new one right here. We'll choose our base color, and we will call this Skin Freckles. And once again, we'll change this to 4096. And we'll change our color here to black and reduce the alpha channel. There we go. Now let's click OK. And here it is here. Let's put it in place. And I will take these two and drag them over a bit. Let me do that. Because what we need to do is add another RGB node right in here. Let's press Shift A, Color, Mix RGB right here. Let's add this to that right there. Now it doesn't look quite right, so let's change this to Add, and we can see the color the way it's supposed to be, right? Let's also come down here and change it to Skin Freckles. There we go. So now, you would think we'd be able to paint our freckles. But if we paint now, we can't see anything. So what let's do is let's change this to Mix, and let's take this alpha channel right here and drop it into that socket right there. Now if we come over here to our character, let me hit the F key and make this a little bit smaller, something like this. I'm going to turn off symmetry here. And then if we click and drag, look, freckles. So they don't need to be quite that strong though. Let's come over here and bring the strength down some like this. And I might make it a little bit bigger. So now we could just come through here and begin drawing out our freckles. I can just use the brush to paint on freckles of random orientation and varying sizes because we painted them in varying sizes in Krita. And I can maybe bring some up here like this. There we go. So that's an easy way to be able to paint freckles onto your character. And you can, of course, make them stronger or lighter, whatever you think. We could come over here to Erase Alpha and also remove the texture from our brush here, like that. And then we can erase them or make them a little bit lighter like this. See how you can paint them away. And then we can once again go back to Mix, add that texture back on, and then we can begin painting them back however we like. So you can go through and paint them on, use Erase Alpha to make them lighter or erase them completely. And for me, I think I want to erase the freckles right up here on the bottom of the eyelid. I don't think that looks very good. So I will change to Erase Alpha and remove my texture here. And then I'll make this a little bit smaller, take the strength up a bit, and just paint out these right along the bottom eyelid. I don't think I want that there. There we go. All right, he's got freckles. Now in the next part of the course, I want to use very similar techniques here to create the stripes on the t-shirt. So that's coming up next.